What's going on, guys? This is Ryan with Outpost, and I wanted to talk about an interview that came out with John Boyega. Now, John Boyega has been pretty loose and been pretty much saying whatever he wants on Twitter lately. And some of it's good. Some of it, maybe I have a little bit of an issue with how he addresses things, and we'll get to that in this interview. But I gotta give a shout out to Tugs on Twitter because she did give me the heads up on this. I hadn't seen this article beforehand. It says right here, John Boyega did an interview with Hypebeast, and well, it seems like the cast clearly voiced their concerns and were ignored, which is troubling. So thank you for letting me know about this. And that is true. We'll talk about that, and we'll also talk about something that we can't stop hearing, what John Boyega also said in this interview, where he called a certain segment of fandom toxic. So we will get to that as well. But I do think it's important to call out the great things that John Boyega has said on Twitter, like this, from a couple months ago. I'm sorry, this is from a CBR trash article that says, Rise of Skywalker prequel proves Rey is a better Jedi than Anakin or Luke. And if we remember, he came out and said, I'm sorry, guys, but Anakin's slapping all of us in a pit of lava, including Kylo. So he took the time to retweet that and say that, even if maybe it isn't exactly what they would like, because it's pretty clear that Rey is going to come in and destroy the legacy of Anakin and Luke. But John Boyega, he doesn't give an F. He's going to put this out on Twitter. So that's been good. We also saw him interacting with fans on Twitter who were saying that they were upset with the way his character was treated in The Last Jedi, that, they had some hope for him. Now, personally, I thought that Force Awakens was garbage. I didn't like Force Awakens. I think that everybody was under, as Doomcock likes to say, hypnosis. I think the hypnosis was in full effect, that everyone got pulled into this house of cards that J.J. Abrams built by practical effects and nostalgia and promises of what could come instead of actually what he made. And, one of the criticisms is, well, it's just the first part in a trilogy, they can't do too much world building. That'll be the same for the second one. And then we saw what happened. But to me, The Last Jedi didn't ruin Force Awakens. Force Awakens wasn't very good. It wasn't very good for a Star Wars movie. But with that being said, let's get into what John Boyega said in this article on Hypebeast. And here's the picture. This is very, very fancy. There's actually 3 John Boyegas here. So all have the same look on their face, though. John Boyega, in his own hero's journey, as Star Wars concludes, the actor is using his star power to thrust Hollywood into new territory. And most of it goes up to how he got cast for Force Awakens, what happened in Force Awakens, how The Last Jedi kind of split fandom a little bit. Absolutely. But then here's the interesting part, like we said. Finn's character arc in this new Star Wars trilogy has tracked his journey to break away from the conformity of the First Order stormtroopers and discover his own identity. However, the follow-up film Last Jedi sidetracked that character progression, much to the chagrin of fans and Boyega himself. And it's true, we've been talking about it for, the 2 years since that movie came out, that, he went through this journey in The Force Awakens where he was a guy who was just running away from everything, and then he wanted to stay for something, for his friendship, because he found something he cared about, whatever it was, right? He had made a change. He'd made a transformation. And then at the beginning of The Last Jedi, he's just trying to run away again. And then he just has this nonsensical plot that really doesn't move the story at all. He's just doing stuff to do it. And then at the end, again, he feels like he's found something. He basically goes through the same plot twice. But here's his words. The Force Awakens, I think, was the beginning of something quite solid. The Last Jedi, if I'm being honest, I'd say that was feeling a bit iffy for me, Boyega says. I didn't necessarily agree with a lot of the choices in that, and that's something that spoke to Mark a lot about, and we had conversations about it. Mark Hamill. So he discussed with Mark Hamill their feelings that they didn't feel their characters were going the right direction. Wow, crazy. And it was hard for all of us because we were separated. And they were all that is true. They were all separated through the whole thing. He didn't spend too much time. We didn't spend really any time with Rey and hardly any time with Poe. It was all with Rose. And this is him. It's The Last Jedi, if I'm being honest, I'd say that was feeling a bit iffy for me. That is a politically correct way of saying he hated it. Let's be honest, guys. He's not trying to bash it, but that says something, I feel, in this interview. And then he talks about how he has been candid on Twitter about his feelings, and much to his surprise, Star Wars fans have been responded to say they craved more of his story. A lot of people did. A lot of people liked Force Awakens. Not, I can't count myself among them, but a lot of people did. He believes there's more to be told with his character, but not as a standalone project. He thinks he shines with Daisy Ridley and Oscar Isaac. Of course, it's the first time we've got to see all three of them, really. So, and just as a side note to this whole thing, the fact that they have torn down the legacy of our characters, of Luke Skywalker, of Han Solo, to build up these characters, which are not going to do anything after this trilogy's done, is just disgraceful, in my opinion. They obviously didn't have a clue what they were doing, and these actors have all come out and said that they are done. They are done with Star Wars after this. So, at the end, what was it all for? Why did you end the Skywalker saga? What are you going to do after this? There's going to be no more nostalgia for you to pull off. Until you just remake Episode 4, I suppose, which will happen. Now, one of the things I wanted to address, though, not all of this is good. Not all of this is good. Star Wars fans have always been passionate, but the access and anonymity afforded by social media also means the discourse among fan base can get toxic very quickly, reaching an all-time high right now. And although Boyega can relate to many of the complaints, he could do without some of the more negative manifestations. It gets very, very complicated to handle things from Star Wars fans because of how much words can be twisted to mean something entirely different. And then he says, there are even folks who turn to victimization if matched with the same energy from celebrities. On Twitter, I have a fan who hates the films, and he'll be rude directly to me, and I'll be rude back, and they start crying like babies. They're like, why are you attacking me? And it's like, I thought we were on the same page. I thought we were just going at it. We're Star Wars fans. We're supposed to get heated like this, he says. And I do agree with that. I do agree with that. If you're going to, depending on how you go and approach someone, definitely you should expect, a similar thing back. Now, where the real problem is when we're talking to directors like Rian Johnson, or when we're talking to other people like Pablo Hidalgo, Chuck Wendig, and they come out and they say these vicious, vile things. I will say I've seen John Boyega on Twitter. Most of the time, he won't really smack down people too much from what I've seen. So I do think he keeps it fairly respectful, but he's not afraid to respond. And then this, the rest of the fandom, even when they have problems, it's discussed in a very cordial way, in a fun way. But when it gets toxic, let me see so you can see it. But when it gets toxic, when no one's listening, and then I say one thing, it becomes an attack. Come on, man. I can tell you, you ain't never been in no real fight before. You call that an attack. And it obviously does depend on the situation. But the fact that we're back again, this is another article talking about toxic fandom. This is something that's being pushed. And he's referring to it as toxic fandom. When in reality, as all of us know, that it's fandom. To argue about things, to say, I didn't like this character here, I don't like this director, I love this part, I didn't like this part, why did this happen? Who is Snoke's character? Why did Daisy Ridley's character do that? Why does your character do this? That's fandom, right? There's nothing toxic about it. The level of the amount of people that go over the line or anything like that are so small and minuscule that they're not even relevant. They are not even relevant to the conversation. We know that when these people are talking about toxic fandom, they're talking in the majority about us here in the Fandom Menace. That's where all these things are coming down. You see all these articles saying the same thing over and over again because they're trying to push that toxic label, when in reality it's just fandom. But what do you guys think about John Boyega's comments? I could do without the use of toxic so much. He had some points. I do agree with him with some points there. But the most interesting thing to me was how he just bashed The Last Jedi. I thought it was great. But, John Boyega, he's done with Star Wars. He's not coming back after this, so I don't think he really cares how many bridges he burns on the way back. He's still being PC about it, but it definitely a shot at Rian Johnson and Lucasfilm for letting all that happen. But let me know what you guys think about Boyega, about his comments, and about him just being done with Star Wars. Let me know in the comments below. Make sure you subscribe, smash the like button, ring the bell for notifications, and I'll talk to you guys later. Thanks for watching, everyone, and a huge shout out to my patrons. I appreciate you guys so much. Want to follow me on Twitter or Instagram? Check out the description below. You'll find links to my P.O. box and my Patreon as well. And I'll talk to you guys later.